Thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching The Sports Show, of course, here on Channel 44. Poppy, time to get down to some issues?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, let's touch on the Tour Down Under. Of course, that was launched this week. Is that the best sporting event in South Australia? What about...
It'd have to be up there.
All right, I'm going to give you a couple. The Clipsal.
Yeah.
All right. Now, there will be some finals footy here this year with the Crows. And, of course, we've had a couple of big cricket games. Tour Down Under still number one?
Well, you know what? Over the journey, South Australia has been fighting way above its weight. If you look at some of the events that we've had, and I think the one that stands out to me was last year's A-League Grand Final between Adelaide United and Western Sydney Wanderers, to get 50,000 South Australians on the back of 50,000 at an AFL game just days prior. Well, take your hat off, South Australia. We did a great job. I think that's an indication, and if we put on a good event, the people will come. The Tour Down Under would have to be one of the best events, not only in this state, probably in this country. It has grown, and Jimmy Jakes was on this program talking about its growth from year one when they expected maybe 5, 6, 7, fingers crossed 10,000 turn up for the race through the city, and they had 50,000 turn up year number one. Now we've got hundreds of thousands of people from all over the state, all over the country, and people from internationally calling South Australia home, calling Adelaide home for that couple of week period. Look, I think it is. I think it's the pinnacle of sporting events, and I think it's a pinnacle of organising an international sport. I think they've done an amazing job. They really have.
Yeah, well, Mike Turtleby, a humble man he is.
He is, but you know,
he has done an amazing job.
He's done,
we nearly lost it a couple of times.
Well,
Victoria tried to get it.
Yeah, they did. And you know, listening to Mike, as we did Jimmy Jakes a few weeks ago, listening to Mike talk about the organisation of race finishes in different councils and coordinating. Now, we all know what it's like to deal with a council. At times, it can be hard work. Well, imagine dealing with 3, 4, 5 councils and organising road closures and organising barriers. And it is just a dog's breakfast. But he's now got a template in place that delivers an event that almost goes without a hitch every single year. And yet it manages to bring in the whole state. We've been lucky enough the last couple of years ourselves, haven't we, Smythe, to be involved in the Bupa Challenge. We've got 5,000 and 6,000 of the public wanting to ride 150 Ks. We were there at Victor Harbour last year.
I don't mind telling you, it's hard saying all their names as they're crossing the line too.
Well, we didn't know more than half a dozen, but we got ourselves through it. But you know what? To see the crowd down there at Victor Harbour, the crowd down there acknowledging the public who are just having a day out. Oh, look, it's amazing.
This will surprise you. The last couple of years, we've had a chance to rub shoulders with some of the cyclists from around the world that have come involved in it. They like it more than the Tour de France. They say the Tour de France, a bit like Wimbledon, that's the prestige one. But if they said, you can only go to one this year, which one do you want to go to? Tour Down Under. It's amazing how it's started to not only grab the public, not only grab all the tourists that come in, but the cyclists themselves now are starting to say, this is the best race in the world.
Well, we talk about Jimmy Jakes and the growth from a commentating point of view. Stuart O'Grady joined us a couple of weeks ago, and he made that exact point. It's a good point, Smythe, is that from a cyclist point of view, they came here for a bit of a holiday initially. It is now a must visit. You need to be on your game to be competitive. You know, you just rock on and think, well, you know, I'm a European cyclist. They've come from 5 degrees below to 40 degrees normally into January, early February, and they don't know what's hit them. Unless they're on their game, they're in a bit of bother. So, you know, it delivers so much for everyone. And the fact that the cyclists are taking it seriously means I think the public take it seriously. But what I love is the party around the event. So the fact is, we got spectators sitting there for hours to see the cyclists go through in 8 seconds, but they drink for 2 hours before, they party for 3 hours later. It's great. I love it.
It's an economic boom for the state, no doubt about that. All right, we've talked about how good the Adelaide Oval is. Just we've touched on it, even on the Tour de France with the AFL, with the soccer. It's the pinnacle place to play. Okay, and we'll come to it a bit later. I did the roof climb, and we'll talk about that a little bit later after this segment. Why does the AFL Grand Final have to be held at the MCG? Why can't it be held at Adelaide Oval? Why couldn't it be held at the Sydney Olympic Park? Now, the obvious answer is that, it's the number. So the MCG holds 100,024. Adelaide Oval can hold 53.5. It could squeeze to 54. Sydney Olympic Park, 83,500. Now, I haven't looked at the other grounds, haven't looked at other grounds, but I'm saying to you, If you had to pay twice the amount of money for a ticket to go and watch the grand final at Adelaide Oval, would you do it, or would you go to the MCG?
Look, I would.
No airfares, no accommodation, so it'd be a sellout.
Look, agreed. And I think there should be, and it's hard because people book their tickets a long way out, so you unsure of who's actually playing in the grand final.
Yep.
But the West Coast playing Sydney in the grand final, to me, it seems absolutely ludicrous that it would be played in a state other than Sydney or Western Australia.
I agree.
I mean, it's actually unfair for the supporter bases who support their clubs to the tune of $500 to $1,000 a year to then spend 3 times as much as that to support their team on the most important game of the year. I just find that's bordering on insulting. So it really should be the venue for the side that finishes highest up the ladder. But how do you work that, given that we don't know it until a week out? In saying that, the South Australian government spent several $1 million to get Lance Armstrong here, to add profile to the Tour Down Under. I would have no problem in our government spending many more $1 million to have the AFL Grand Final played at Adelaide Oval. And I'm sure that other states would be willing to pitch to, one, account for some of the loss of revenue because of the smaller crowd, but also the loss of revenue for the MCC itself. That's the dilemma the AFL's got, is an arrangement, an existing arrangement with the MCC. It's locked in. Now, how the AFL do that for a national competition has got me beat, but it is what it is.
All right, and could you imagine then going to the vote? So we're going to go to the vote on where it can be played.
Yes.
There seems to be a strong number of Victorian teams that would vote that out. But I guess in the end, and I come from a sport where if you finish up top, then you get the home ground advantage, home court advantage.
And we do that in the finals leading up.
Well, last year, all the talk was around tanking.
Yes.
Now, you're going to run the risk of tanking now if it means you might have a home grand final, as opposed to, well, hang on a minute, no. So I'm saying it might start to eliminate some of those problems. I just sense that it's all based on money.
Yes.
But I agree with you. The government would be prepared to put money in.
Yes.
The spectators would be prepared to pay more money because it's going to be cheaper to buy a $200 ticket than buy the $100 ticket plus accommodation, airfares, getting their meals and everything else. And I think the fans deserve to be able to go and support their team in their state.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think Sydney, to tell you the truth, I'd actually support the game being showcased in Sydney. I think Sydney, if they're serious about the development of the game in Sydney and wanting to get Greater Western Sydney involved, then it's a shoo-in. The fact is, we've got a really passionate supporter base here. We've seen it for the last 2 years, week in, week out. So why would you give it to a state that's already got it when you're really wanting to develop it? So, short answer.
It should be that way, but long answer is it's not going to be.
No.
One more question on the Adelaide Oval, because spending a bit of time there. Should Adelaide United make that their home base? Can they move away from Hindmarsh and make that?
No.
Or they just use it for
the
3 or 4 big games over the course of the year?
Big games only. Hindmarsh is fine. I'd love to fit another 5,000, 10,000 people there. It is what it is. It's a soccer-specific stadium, and it brings with it something that Adelaide Oval can't deliver. Unless you've got 50,000 people there.
All right, quick one on AFL. We like to try and cover all sports. We tend to get stuck a bit on the AFL, but Matthew Loeby's back playing this week, probably come through the Magpies.
Yes.
Power are not going to make the grand final. I mean, they're talking about the North Melbourne game this weekend, mathematically. So it doesn't look likely for them.
Yes.
As a coach now, would you risk Matthew Loeby in an AFL game now, or would you just slowly work him back, getting him ready for next year?
Yeah, look, it'd be a really tough one, Smythe, to make the decision on. But is that not tanking? I mean, if you're not playing your best side every week, what you tell me the definition of tanking. Because Dean Bailey at one stage didn't put his best side out there with a view that it was an opportunity to develop young talent, and he was charged with tanking. And AFL should hang their head in shame on that decision. What they did to that bloke was unforgivable. So my point is there's a balancing act between what's seen as right and what is right.
Look, I reckon in this case it's what's right for the player.
Yes.
We've got our due diligence on what's right. So I think Matty will play some AFL games. I think he'll be good enough, he'll be ready to go. Now, Poppy, we've got to get to a break. Of course, we're coming back.
Are we going to see more of you at Adelaide Oval?
We are going to see, not just I, there's some superstar Olympians that are on the roof going across Adelaide Oval. Stay with us.